There's a dish Ukrainian settlers ate on the Canadian prairies in the 1920s that nobody talks about anymore. It wasn't borscht, it wasn't perogies, it was something far simpler, something that kept entire families alive through winters so brutal the mercury dropped to 40 below zero. When Ukrainian peasants arrived on frozen homesteads in Alberta and Saskatchewan with nothing but sheepskin coats and empty pockets, they had to eat. So they cooked survival food, the kind that stretched a single handful of grain into dinner for 8. 30 dishes that have nearly vanished from memory. Today, let's bring them back. 1. Buckwheat kasha, with nothing on top. This was the foundation. Plain buckwheat, boiled in water with salt. No butter, no milk, no meat. Just the grain itself, cooked until soft and slightly sticky, served in a wooden bowl and eaten with a wooden spoon. Buckwheat grew easily on the prairie. It didn't need rich soil. It didn't complain about the short growing season or the unfamiliar climate, and it filled your stomach in a way that lasted for hours. Men ate this before walking into freezing darkness to tend livestock. Women ate this while nursing infants in one-room cabins. Children ate this and didn't complain because they understood, even young, that this was what there was. This was survival measured in grains. This was the meal that got you through to the next meal. 2. Black rye bread baked in the clay oven. They called it the pitch, that massive clay oven that dominated every Ukrainian homestead. Families would fire it up once or twice a week and bake enough bread to last. Dark, dense rye loaves with thick crusts that could stop a knife. This bread had weight, it had substance. You could slice it thick, and it would keep for days without going stale. And when it finally did harden, you did not throw it away. You soaked it in milk or broth or just water. Nothing got wasted. Nothing could be wasted. That bread was hours of labor, from grinding the grain to kneading the dough to feeding the fire. Every single slice mattered. 3. Salo on dark bread. Salo is cured pork fat. Pure white fat, salted and sometimes smoked, sliced thin and eaten on bread. No meat, just fat. And here is the thing. When you are doing manual labor in 40 below zero weather, when you are clearing land, building fences, and hauling water from frozen wells, fat is not just food, it is fuel. It keeps you warm from the inside. It gives you energy that lasts for hours. Ukrainian settlers knew this from generations of practice in the old country. So when they slaughtered a pig in winter, they cured that fat carefully, stored it in the root cellar, and rationed it through the long months when nothing grew and the world was white and silent. 4. Borscht from the root cellar. Not bright red borscht from fresh summer beets. This was winter borscht, made from beets stored underground since fall, from cabbage that had been fermented in barrels, from whatever scraps of bone could be found. You would pull those beets from the cold earth, brush off the dirt, and cook them slowly. The fermented cabbage added sourness. A bone added depth. That borscht would simmer on the pitch for hours, filling the cabin with warmth, with smell, and with something that felt like hope. This was the dish that proved you had planned ahead, that you had stored enough, that you would make it through another winter. 5. Pyrohai filled with sauerkraut, not potato and cheese, not the fillings you find in supermarket freezers today. These were pyrohai stuffed with fermented cabbage, tangy and sharp, made in huge batches on days when the whole family gathered around the table to pinch dough and fill pockets. Because pyrohai were not everyday food on the homestead, they took time. They took flour, which cost money. They were special, and when they were made, they came out by the dozens, boiled, then fried with onions. Children learned to make them young. 6. Kapusta. Plain boiled cabbage with salt. That's it. Cabbage from the barrel or from storage, chopped, boiled until soft, seasoned with salt, sometimes with bread, sometimes eaten alone. Cabbage grew well on the prairie, and it stored well. It could be fermented or kept in the root cellar, and when there was nothing else, there was always cabbage. This was not a recipe anyone wrote down. It was just what you did. 7. Boiled potatoes with rendered fat. Potatoes and fat, the two things that kept more immigrant families alive than anything else. You would boil the potatoes until soft, drain them, and drizzle them with whatever fat you had saved. Pork fat, chicken fat, whatever was rendered and stored. You would eat them warm, plain, with maybe some salt. That was the meal. That was enough. Potatoes did not fail often. They kept well in root cellars. That fat carried the calories bodies needed to survive the work in the cold. 8. Halubtsi stuffed with buckwheat. Not rice. Rice did not exist on early prairie homesteads. It had to be bought, shipped, and paid for. Buckwheat grew right there in the fields. Cabbage rolls were stuffed with buckwheat and onions. Maybe a little meat if there was any, rolled tight in cabbage leaves and baked slowly. They took hours, a true labor of love. They were saved for Sundays when the family could sit together. 9. Compote from dried fruits. In summer, when Saskatoon berries ripened and wild plums could be found, women would dry them. They hung the fruit near the stove and stored it for winter, when the snow fell and fresh fruit was just a memory. They took those dried fruits and simmered them in water until the liquid turned sweet and fragrant. Compote was a drink that tasted like summer in the middle of February. Children received small cups, and they sipped them slowly to make the drink last. 10. Fermented cucumber brine. When the pickles were gone, the brine remained, and that brine was not waste. You would drink it straight. Salty, sour, full of whatever nutrients had leached from the cucumbers. Some said it cured illness. Some said it gave you strength. What is certain is that nothing from the pickle barrel got thrown away. The brine was its own food. This was immigrant wisdom, understanding that every last drop had value. 11. Machanka, pork gravy poured over bread. When a pig was slaughtered, every part was used, including the fat that rendered out, the juices that collected, and the scraps too small to save separately. You would make a thick gravy, rich and salty, and pour it over chunks of stale bread. The bread would soak up every drop, and you would eat it while it was still hot. This was feast food made from scraps. This was turning almost nothing into something that tasted like abundance. A father coming home from work in the fields would smell that gravy and know his family had managed to make something from the little they had. 12. Kishka, blood sausage with buckwheat. When the pig was killed, you caught the blood. You mixed it with cooked buckwheat, onions, and salt. You stuffed it into intestines and boiled it. What came out was dark, rich, and substantial, a sausage that used what others might throw away. This was old country cooking brought to new land. Children who grew up eating kishka remember the taste decades later. It was iron, earth, and survival. 13. Kolodets, meat jelly made from bones. You would take whatever bones you had, pig feet, cow joints, and boil them for 8 to 10 hours until the water turned to gelatin and every bit of flavor had been extracted. Sliced and eaten with horseradish, kolodets was winter food, the kind that used time instead of ingredients, the kind that proved patience could make something from almost nothing. 14. Dried mushroom soup. Families foraged mushrooms in the aspen parklands during summer and fall. They dried them on strings and hung them near the pitch. In winter, those dried mushrooms became soup. You would soak them, simmer them, and add whatever stretched the meal. That knowledge, carried from Ukraine, was applied to the Canadian woods. 15. Salamaka, thin buckwheat gruel. When the grain ran low, families stretched it further. They added more water and cooked it thinner. Salamaka was what Cossacks ate on campaigns and what peasants ate in the worst times. It barely held together in the bowl, but it was warm. It was something. It kept you alive one more day. 16. Pickled beets with horseradish. Sharp, intense flavor in a world of bland survival food. Beets pulled from the root cellar, sliced and pickled. served with freshly grated horseradish that cleared your sinuses. The horseradish grew wild on the prairie. Together they made something that woke up your mouth. 17. Pampushki with borscht, small garlic rolls baked alongside the bread dough, served floating in a bowl of borscht. The garlic was rubbed on while the rolls were still warm. When you bit into one, soaked with the sour red soup, it was perfect. This was Sunday food, church day food. 18. Lazy vareniki. When there was not time for proper pierogi, you would mix cottage cheese with flour and egg, form rough dumplings, and boil them. These were not beautiful. They were not the carefully pinched crescents of tradition, but when a mother was exhausted from a day of work and still had to feed hungry children before dark, lazy vareniki were love expressed through shortcuts. She would serve them with whatever was on hand, sour cream if she had it, just butter if she did not, and her children ate them without complaint because they understood that food made quickly was still food made with care. 19. Plain wheat berry porridge, not kudia, not the Christmas version with honey and poppy seeds. Just wheat berries boiled soft and eaten plain, chewy, substantial, filling, what children ate when nothing else remained, what families ate when the other grains were running low, and they were waiting, hoping, praying for spring. 20. Sorrel soup from foraged greens. Spring, finally spring. Among the first things to push through the snow were wild sorrel leaves. Women knew where to find it. They would gather it, bring it home, and make soup. That first sour spring soup tasted like survival, like making it through, like the world coming back to life. 21. Stale bread soaked in milk. Breakfast for children. Bread too hard to chew, broken into bowls, milk poured over, maybe a pinch of sugar. Quick, simple, made from what was already there. The meal before chores, before the day began. 22. One egg divided many ways. Eggs were precious. The chickens did not always lay. So when there were eggs, they were stretched. One egg scrambled with onions, divided among 5 children. The mother often went without. She would say she was not hungry. Everyone knew the truth. 23. Onion and lard on bread. When a child asked for something sweet and there was no sugar, no honey, a mother would slice bread, spread it with lard, top it with thin sliced onion, and sprinkle salt. And she'd call it a treat. And the child would believe her, because the way she handed it over made it feel special. This was love disguised as onions. 24. Uzvar for special days. Dried apples, dried pears, and dried plums simmered slowly until the water turned golden and sweet. Uzvar was saved for Christmas, for Easter, for name days, and special celebrations. Children waited all year for that sweet dark drink, and when it finally came, served in small, precious cups, it was magic. It was proof that even in hardship, even in the darkest months of winter, there were moments of sweetness. Moments that made the struggle worth enduring. 25. Dried peas boiled to mush. When meat was gone and potatoes were running low, there were always dried peas. They were soaked overnight and boiled for hours until they broke down into thick mush. Season it with salt and maybe onion if there was any left. This was end of winter food, March food. The desperate weeks when everything was running out but spring had not come yet, and you had to find something, anything, to put in the pot. 26. Millet porridge with nothing. Millet cooked in water, plain. Food for desperate times, when even buckwheat was rationed. Ancient food that had fed ancestors for centuries. On the prairie, it fed another generation. 27. Soured milk over cold potatoes. When milk went sour before refrigeration, you poured it over leftover potatoes. Strange, humble, but it used what would otherwise spoil. Using everything was how you survived. 28. Spring nettle soup from foraged patches. Among the first plants to appear after snowmelt were stinging nettles, handled carefully with gloves, blanched to remove the sting, and made into a bright green soup. Free food that cost nothing, It reminded people the land could provide even when the cellar was empty. Old women knew where to find them, the same places every year, and they would teach their daughters and granddaughters where to look. 29. Kutia, the sacred dish. Wheat berries cooked soft, sweetened with honey, mixed with poppy seeds, served on Christmas Eve, the first of 12 dishes, eaten after the first star appeared in the winter sky. Children threw spoonfuls at the ceiling. If it stuck, the crops would be good in the coming year. Kutia connected every generation. The same dish grandmothers made in Galicia, made now in Alberta, made with prairie wheat and wild honey. This wasn't just food. This was prayer on a plate. This was continuity. This was remembering. 30. Fresh bread with new butter. Spring again. Finally spring. The cows giving milk again. The churn producing butter golden and soft and rich. Fresh bread still warm from the pitch, spread thick with that butter. After all those months of rationing, of stretching, of making do with almost nothing, this was abundance. This was what you'd been waiting for. Children would eat until they couldn't anymore. They'd stand at the table with bread in both hands and butter on their faces, and they wouldn't stop until their stomachs ached with fullness. Mothers would watch and cry, not from sadness, from relief, from joy, from the knowledge that they'd made it through another winter, that spring had come, that the hard months were over. 30 dishes. 30 stories of survival in a land that offered little and demanded everything. These were not restaurant foods. They were the foods that kept families alive on frozen homesteads, that stretched pennies into meals, that turned scraps into love. The people who made them were building communities, raising children, making foreign soil feel like home. Most of these dishes have disappeared now, but the memories matter. If your Baba made things you never wrote down, share the story. Tell someone what she cooked, because these foods deserve remembering, not as curiosities, but as proof that love can be measured in buckwheat and bread. Which dish from this list connects to your family's own story?